Hello and welcome to Snapkeep, brought to you by themanabase.com, your home base for all things Magic the Gathering. I'm Jim Lepage, your host, and today we're going to be talking about Planeswalkers. Planeswalkers were introduced back in Lorwyn block, and they were a brand new card type. And unfortunately, with all new card types, they come with a little bit of rules baggage. So today we're going to be delving real deep into the rules baggage associated with this weird card type. And we're going to be talking about some of the stuff coming down the pipe with respect to the Planeswalker rules changes. Today we're here with Level 2 Judge from Winnipeg, Manitoba, and long-term friend of the show, Jan DeVlaming. Jan, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Today we're talking Planeswalkers. Specifically, we're talking about the changes that came in the Ixalan Comp Rules release. Can you walk me through a little bit about what changed?
So what changed was, previously we had two separate rules that handled both Planeswalkers and Legendary rules, and they decided it was a little too complex for people to get their head around. We'll have the two rules up on the screen very shortly, and what they decided to do is just amalgamate them into one. So they got rid of what they call the Planeswalker uniqueness rule and just went with the Legend rule for all permanents. So going forward, all Planeswalkers will be printed with the Super Type Legendary, and all Planeswalkers before now will be errated to have the Super Type Legendary.
Jan, what was possible before that's not possible now?
Actually, nothing really. There was a bit of a hiccup when the Planeswalkers first came up, but they managed to fix that when they first introduced the Planeswalker uniqueness rule. So as a current standard before that, there wasn't too much that we could do that is changed.
Was there anything that was impossible before that's possible now?
Yes. So with the way the rules change now, the Legendary rule allows you to have two permanents in play that are the same type as long as they have different names. So now you can have both Gideon Ally of Zendikar and Gideon of the Trials, or Jace the Mind Sculptor, Jace Beleren at the same time. So we're seeing a lot of Super Friends decks kind of be able to explode because you're getting multiple use, and Liliana's a big one in Modern that we're potentially going to be seeing.
Mm-hmm. Whereas before, the subtype of Liliana would prevent you from doing that.
So as part of that state-based action, you'd have to choose one and sacrifice the other.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about the cards themselves. Do any cards get considerably better or considerably worse with this rules change?
So leading up into this, I looked through every card that references Legendary, and there's quite a lot. And there's only a very short list that actually have much effect. Most of them only will actually affect animated Gideons, because they refer to legendary creatures, so he will remain legendary. Mm-hmm. The big ones being Reki, History of Kamigawa, Captain Sisay, which legislates for legendaries, Empress Galena, which is a very old card, Thalia's Lancers, relatively new, Honor-Worn Shaku, Mirror Gallery, which is going to work in the opposite direction, where it's just going to shut off Legend rule entirely, so you can have 4 Jace the Mind Sculptors. And yeah, so very short list.
Mostly from Kamigawa block.
Block.
Unsurprisingly there.
Yes.
We're talking about legendary permanents, and a Kamigawa block comes up in spades, right?
Yes.
So, yeah. Which one's your favorite out of all those?
My favorite new one? I'm a big fan of the Honor-Worn Shaku, because now you can tap your Planeswalkers to generate mana.
This is nice.
So you can have all your permanents sideways.
Well, yeah.
And people ask, I'm tapped out. I have no mana, no anything. All
and you know me, I'm a Boros player in my
Yes.
casual time, so, turning things sideways just comes naturally to me, right?
Yes.
So we don't really have a whole lot of commentary aside from the fact that this is changing. It has already changed. It's changed in Ixalan, and it's going to be like that going forward. But what we're really here to talk about today is some of the stuff that's coming down the pipe. We've been doing a little bit of reading in Mark Rosewater's blog, and there's potentially a bigger change coming out of Planeswalkers.
Much bigger, much more in-depth and wide-reaching change than this one. Surprisingly, because this is going to affect more than just Planeswalker cards. It's going to affect a whole slew of instants and sorceries and creatures and all sorts of things.
So what is this change? We're talking about redirection, obviously, but can you tell me what's going on?
So the change that's coming up is they're now going to specify on cards whether or not they can deal damage to Planeswalkers. And this is differentiating because before we had a rule that handled it. Now it's just going to say specifically on the card.
We had a couple of rules that handled it, right? We had the comp rules, and then we also had a section of the MTR.
Yes, so we had the competitive rules handled it. And then we had a tournament shortcut that made everything work. The system we currently have in place, and until further notice, is we have rules in the comp rules 306.7. We'll have it up in the screen if anyone else wants to look it up, which essentially just says any damage that you would deal to a player through a non-creature source, you can choose to redirect to a planeswalker they control. Now, what a lot of us do is we just say things like, I'm going to bolt your Jace, or things like that. That doesn't actually work the way we think it does.
So how does it work?
Well, so in order to smooth it out so it works, the way you're supposed to do it is, I'm going to target you with this lightning bolt, and then I'm going to redirect the damage to the Jace.
On resolution.
On resolution. That's a lot of talking. Yeah. So we have a tournament shortcut that lets us simply say, if I decide I'm going to lightning bolt your Jace, and specifically say I'm going to lightning bolt your Jace, what you're saying to your opponent is, I am using this shortcut to tell you that I am targeting you with this lightning bolt, and if it resolves, I'm going to deal damage to your Jace. So we have it set up right now that it works fairly intuitively. They just want to make it a little more simplified and streamlined. The big problem with this is going to be the undertaking of errating thousands, potentially, of cards, and determining which ones will be able to deal damage to planeswalkers and which ones won't. Now, going forward, it'll be much easier, because they'll know when they go into their design, but trying to decide, Lightning Bolt probably will, Lightning Strike probably will, Shock probably will, but things like Perforos probably won't.
Yeah. Or maybe it will. Who
Or
knows,
might, yeah,
right?
we have no idea.
If we
Random
can just
speculation.
wildly speculate with absolutely no basis behind this whatsoever.
Correct.
But...
So the easiest way we have now is anything that would deal damage to a player can also deal damage to a planeswalker.
And now this change is not unprecedented. We do have cards that do specifically target planeswalkers, right?
Yes.
This is not a brand new concept to be able to target a planeswalker directly, but is there anything that wasn't possible before that we can do now in this new brave new world?
Not particularly. Well, nothing in the sense of being able to directly target things, but it does change how Hexproof and Shroud's going to interact in this way. So as it is right now, if you yourself as a player have Hexproof or Shroud with, say, Leyline of Sanctity or Witchbane Orb, things like that, I can't actually bolt you and redirect to your Jace. It just won't work. Now you'll need to give the Planeswalker Hexproof or Shroud with, say, Heroic Intervention, things like that, in order to stop the damage being dealt. So that's going to be a little bit of a change.
That's when I get my, sweet March of the Machines Deem combo going on.
Yes, that's going to be really cool.
With, of course, Mycosynth Lattice. Of course.
Yes. And the reason that this is going to take, we have no idea when this is going to happen. Mark Rosewater has not announced a date. It's just purely a thing they are working on. And part of the reason is they have to go kind of card by card to make this decision, because they can't just say all things that target players can now target planeswalkers, because then you have things like Ancestral Recall, target Jace, draw 3 cards. Well, Jace can't draw 3 cards because he has no fingers.
Could. I mean, we could probably work that into the comp rules somehow, right? If Floral Spasm can make a decision, I think Jace can draw a card.
Well, I mean, we're still waiting for Floral Spasm to make his decision, and so it should be a very huge overhaul.
It'll be interesting.
As you've mentioned, they've made big ones like this, changing instants to interrupts, and changing cast to play, mana sources to mana abilities.
Creature subtypes was another big change, right? You can no longer summon your Uncle Istvans of the world or your mana birds. They're just birds or humans or whatever they got errated to. But it's going to be a big undertaking. Jen, can you tell me, are there any issues with errating cards on such a large scale like this?
Yes. So the biggest issue with errating cards in such a large quantity is since not every card is going to get errated the way we think, not everybody knows what's going to get errated. So what's going to happen is there's going to be changes to what we refer to the Oracle text. And the Oracle text essentially is what would the card say if it was printed right now? So a lot of old cards, you have to go read them because they don't work the way they're printed all the time, because it doesn't jive with how the game works or for whatever reason. So the big issue being we won't know what has been errated and what hasn't, so you won't always know what to ask. But it's a good thing to know, just a tip for anyone playing Magic, you always, when you're playing in a tournament, have the right to know the Oracle text of any card at all. Not just ones in play, not just ones in your deck, not just ones your opponents have. Just any card that you need to know what it does because you think your opponent might have it. You can always call a judge and ask. We're always happy to come and show you. So I feel like that's going to be a big adjustment period. There's a lot of people calling us at events. You know, did they errata this to say this? Did they errata this to say this? Can I still do this? So that's going to take a huge amount of time to get used to. But hopefully transition will be smooth and not bumpy. But I mean, fingers crossed.
Yeah, what I'm hoping, you know, in my heart of hearts, I'm hoping that they come up with a good checklist of 3 or 4 items that says, if this is the case, if this is the case, if this is the case, we will errata it to target a Planeswalker, you know. And maybe that's wishful thinking on my part, but it would be certainly would be nice, you know, to be able to give somebody like a heuristic saying, you know, this is what it is. This is how we're going to deal with this.
Type of cards that are, you know, specifically not going to. If it says all opponents, it isn't getting errated, and then we don't have to worry about it, and it'll just be a quick, I don't have to look this up kind of thing. But
yeah. You know, anything to make it a little bit more intuitive for somebody that's looking at a card and has to know what it is, right?
Yeah, so. And that's the big part, because Magic can be very quick and very fast paced game, and you don't always have time to stop and think, and by the time you realize something's gone wrong, it could be 2 or 3 turns, and that's not...
But again, if there's one takeaway from this, if you're not sure, call a judge.
Yes.
That's really the thing that we, you know,
that is very important.
Yeah.
Yes. We will have the answers for you.
Or can get the answers. You know. Anyway, that about wraps things up for our segment today. This has been Snapkeep. I'm your host, James Lepage, and Jan DeVlaming, our guest. Thanks for coming on the show today,
Thanks for
Jan.
having me.
And thanks to our sponsors, themanabase.com, your home base for all things Magic the Gathering.